move now into a segment that we call start, sub, or sit.
Okay.
And so for those listening, maybe for the first time, we'll give you 3 different basketball topics and ask you to start one, to sub one, and to sit one. And then we can have a fun little discussion around your answers. So, okay. Coach, we were talking a little bit beforehand. We're all fans of the show, Ted Lasso. And so we came up with 3 Ted Lasso quotes here for you. And so we'd like to have you start one, sub one, and sit one as far as maybe your first, second, third favorites. And we can maybe discuss why from there. So quote number 1 from Ted Lasso is, be curious, not judgmental. Quote number 2 is, you know what the happiest animal on earth is? It's a goldfish. You know why? It's got a 10-second memory. Be a goldfish. And quote number 3 is, taking on a challenge is a lot like riding a horse. If you're comfortable while you're doing it, you're probably doing it wrong. So start, sub, sit, those 3 Ted Lasso quotes: judgmental, goldfish, or the horse.
Am I doing it by my reaction to those quotes or what I think is applicable to basketball?
Yeah.
Probably
applicable. Yeah.
I mean, I was trying to, I've watched every episode. I love it. I think it's awesome. And I love the mental health focus in this second season. It's so on point with so many things in that show, but these quotes are just 3 of them, right? I would say, oh man, I don't even remember now that you're saying it. I'd say the be curious, not judgmental. I mean, they're all 3 really good.
Yeah.
I would probably say that one. What was the middle one? The horse.
The goldfish.
The horse, I would say, is probably 3rd, but I think it's like really good too. I'd say be curious, not judgmental. And then what was the second one?
Be a goldfish, 10-second memory.
Oh yeah. The goldfish one I love, especially when you're in sports. And I've got a 15-year-old and a 12-year-old, and and that kind of goes back to, like, you're always worried about what somebody says about you, or what the instant feedback we're getting in the social media era, or you miss a shot and you're not confident, and you don't let the next one fly. Like, I love that. Like, let it go. Have shot amnesia. Let that thing go. That's what I would start. Be curious, not judgmental. I think that the curious part's great, but the not judgmental part is like super duper important. And then, I like the horse one because I do think that it's, you have to become comfortable being uncomfortable, but, so I'd probably play them some.
Yeah.
I wouldn't play them all the time.
Yeah, for sure.
We don't sit anybody all the time. Everybody in the NBA gets their opportunity at some point.
For sure.
Is this in the realm of possibilities where a coach that maybe tactically doesn't know much about the sport, but is just awesome in mental health, communication, culture building, and then, like we said, the staff size are so big. Do you think in any world that it could be feasible to have maybe just someone who has a rough estimate of the game, but is awesome in all these other things, and then just supported with a great staff of experts?
I think it's so interesting. I've thought about that a lot, right? Could you take somebody that is just, world class at all of those things and put them in a position where they're surrounded by experts at all of the areas of the game and do that well? I don't know the answer to that, but I do think, I don't think it's no for sure, and I think that's, I've been really lucky, obviously, right? So I've seen the best coaches in the game coach. I've watched practices. I've gone to meet with them, spend time with them. But I've been in Bill Belichick's practices before, right? And I've seen how all of his coaches coach their areas, and with a lot of like responsibility and autonomy. And it does make you wonder, like, could a person like Belichick, who just has, everything mapped out all across the program, who is, able to focus on all the things that matter and nothing else, right? Could that translate to any sport? I would guess so, but I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah. Coach, if I could just circle back to thing you said early in that answer before we move on to the next start subset, but just about how the second season of Ted Lasso is really focused a lot on mental health and things like that. And just from your point of view, dealing with the professionals and the pressure and all of that, just how you would try to assist or help in those areas so that, players felt like they were making progress there as well.
Well, we have our, kind of processes in place, and, the people that we work with that really focus on the wellness and mental health areas. We're very in tune and alert to the fact that, the onset of depression and anxiety often happens between 18 and 24. And with the amount of scrutiny and the amount of praise and the amount of feedback that doesn't matter that we all get in this kind of world, and the players get 10 times more than anybody else, you just want to hopefully, provide an environment and provide a place where, people understand, like, have the perspective on what's important and what's not, and hopefully aren't affected by, again, the negativity or the overpraising. But the reality is that regardless is you're still, going to have the ups and downs and go through the ups and downs, whether you're a, 44-year-old coach or whether you're a 19-year-old player, and you have to be able to navigate those. And it's not easy. Everybody has, their own experiences, and everybody's their own person. And we want to very much normalize the idea that, working on yourself, working on your own mental state, your own mindset is just as important as getting in the weight room and working on your strength. Right. And I think that is something that is really important. Again, I didn't love the meetings that I was a part of in the corporate world, but I did love the fact that I worked on, 2 drugs, Prozac, which was an antidepressant, and Zyprexa, which was bipolar medication, that really taught me a lot about mental health in the late 90s or early 2000s when, it was still tough it out time, and I just think as coaches or people in the front office or training staffs or whatever, our first thought should not be, well, that person's not tough enough, or that person's not, isn't here today. It's like, why? Like, can we help? Is there something we can do to help? How do we, kind of be proactive about that?
Coach, sorry, just because I think this is an important subject too. How about for coaches as well and people on your staff, sort of self-care throughout the course of a season, whether it was back in the college level or at the professional level, for staffs and coaches to take care of themselves as well?
Yeah, I think that, well, first of all, we've been through, the last couple of years, I think have challenged everybody, right?
Yeah.
Whether, just because the pain in the world, the pain in all of our communities. And then, I think that on top of that, trying to do a job that is really difficult and try to do it really well. And so I think it's important for coaches to not only take time to focus on themselves and make sure that they are, appropriately in tune to that, but also, like, we all grew up in this culture of, you get into the office at 6 a.m., you leave at 2 a.m., you're watching film till your eyes are dry. And I just think that there's a diminishing point of returns in the season. And we land at 3 a.m. half the time, right? Or we, very rarely are getting regular good sleep. Very rarely do you have a homestand. So it's already taking a toll on your mind and body. And my suggestion to anybody is do something else. Find areas of the day to do something else. Obviously, you want to work out, but take time to focus your mind elsewhere. Like take 30 minutes or take an hour and go for a walk and listen to a podcast that has nothing to do, no offense, with basketball, right? And I just think that those things are helpful. I tell the story all the time that we lost a game I think we were on a couple game losing streak, and we headed out to play the Warriors. And, like the Warriors were the Warriors then. It was like, they were on their run. And so we land in Golden State, and typically I would watch a couple of more games and work on my own game sheet, get prepared, and probably not talk to anybody that night, and probably, go to sleep whenever I went to sleep, order in food, all those things. And, I just called Jamie Young, who was an assistant coach, and Micah Shrewsbury, who, again, the head coach at Penn State. And I said, let's get out of here. And so we rented bikes and we rode across the Golden Gate Bridge. And then we won the next night. Like me watching Steph Curry run off the screen and shoot a crazy shot and losing any more sleep over that was not going to do us any good. I knew that he was going to go for 30 points, 20 of which would be on SportsCenter and would be like miraculous points. But I knew we were going to make it hard. We had played them a bunch. I watched them every night, just like everyone else did. So I didn't need to watch them anymore. And I think that was just a great reminder that, hey, sometimes it's more about clearing your own mind. We want our players to play with a clear mind. You should have a clear mind as a coach too. And I was not always good at that, and I hope that if I'm going to stay out of Ime's way and let him do his thing, because I think that's really important. But I hope if I have anything that I can add to his experience, I help him get away from it.
All right, Coach. Well, we'll get back to the court. And so the next start sub sit for you we have is defending the Spanish pick and roll, or the stack screen in the pick and roll. So
I can only talk about these things because I have no idea how we're going to do it. So it is fun because now I can say whatever I want, I guess.
Yes. You're not giving away any secrets. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, Coach. So start sub sit, switching with the guard to guard or the ball handler stack screener.
Right.
Switching every screen, or trap the initial screen and try to just blow it up right away.
Yeah. So we've always trapped it because, again, you have a system and a way of doing it. And, we could not guard it for 2 weeks and then play somebody that runs it over and over and guard it over and over. So we had always trapped it. I think that in an ideal world, you just switch the first screen, right? Because it's you just have all kinds of versatile people that can do it. I think if you have a typical team, especially if you're a college team and you don't have that kind of versatility and that kind of length athleticism across the board, then I would probably trap it. But the number one way to do it is to three-way it, which was your middle option. But that is that takes a lot of recognition. It takes a lot of thought. It takes a lot of, communication, and guys in this league do a pretty good job of that. So I would start three-way. I would try to blow it up and trap it. And then because I don't think you always want to switch guard to guard just because of the way it is, or the first screen, then let's just sit that for now. And let's get good at those other things, because that's the easiest answer is just the simple switch. Whatever's more difficult, throw in early, and then you can go to easy later. The three-way is great, though. People need to work on that type of stuff because those are things that we would do all the time in training camp, not necessarily with that action, but, being able to communicate. A person in help takes the roller and then sends the person that was in the action back to a perimeter player. Yeah. I think that's what we called the three-way.
Coach, just a quick technical follow-up on that three-way switch. Would you prefer the defender guarding the ball to send it one direction so you kind of knew where the switches would come from? Did it matter? Do you want them straight up, or did you want to send it a certain way?
I didn't care which direction as much as that it was all communicated perfectly. So inevitably, because of that, because you want to simplify your communication, you're sending it a direction most of the time. Okay. Right. So, whether you're sending left in the middle, or you're icing on the sides, or sending to the screen on the sides, whatever the case may be, the bottom line is everyone had to be on the same page. Again, I don't think there's an exact way that is the best way. I think the best way is when all of your team is totally sold out, committed to it, and on one page. And so everything takes off from there. Figure out your personnel, do what they all do best, communicate great, cover the biggest threats, and play with multiple efforts. And good things are going to happen, whether you send the ball to the screen, you down it, whatever the case may be.
Coach, my follow-up is when you blow up the screen, then obviously I think most of the offenses will just like immediately pop that stack screener. And if it's a shooter, what are you telling that defender? And as far as how you want to then guard, I'm assuming the short roll and his man popping out off of that Spanish action.
Opposite corner is the most important person in the play.
Okay.
So that person protects everything. And so as that guy pops out, as that guy slips out, whatever the case may be, you're blowing up the ball. He's there to protect the roll, and then you play off of that. And if the trap's good enough, again, this goes back to Belichick, right? So if the trap's good enough, you disrupt the whole play. Let's not figure out how to guard the 10 different reads out of the play. Let's blow that thing up from the get-go.
What is a good trap to you? Or what then are the parameters of a good trap?
Obviously don't get split. Don't let the corner get turned. The more that you can play with high hands to make a hang time pass or deflect the ball, the better. And then if you have two guys if you have a guy that, again, was setting the Spanish screen or the Spain screen and then popping out, or if he slips out early, whatever the case may be, if those two guys on the weak side can read, right, how the duress that the ball handler is under, then that gives you even more of an understanding of how much you can gamble, how much you can help, and how much you maybe don't need to help, right? Yeah. And I think that's largely dependent on who you're guarding and what kind of attack and aggression you can trap the ball with.
So, Coach, for this last one, then we're going to call this our back to school question. If you were to say get a high school or maybe a small college or just a different level job, if you're going back and you were going to put in more of a base offensive system that's non-pick and roll based at those lower levels, would you start, sub, or sit, flex, dribble, drive, motion, or putting in a pure like 5-out motion offense?
Well, I've actually coached one other team in these 14 years for one day. And my, at the time, 5th grade girl decided that she wanted to try basketball, and she's more of a soccer player. And so I watched one game, and they were all playing for the first time and all standing in the paint. So I showed them clips of the 5-out, spacing. And so it was super fun for me. It was probably a little over the top. But anyway, but it did get us closer to getting, popsicles at the end of practice. So we were good. Yeah. I would say in this day and age, because of the way that people have learned to play, I would say that I would go dribble drive, then traditional motion, then flex. So sit, flex. Traditional motion is if you can get a group that can play that way, and that can learn to play the game, that can learn screening and cutting and slipping and all those things, that's really, really helpful. There are some good off the ball cutters and actions and people in this league. A lot of times, the guys that are the best at it are not only playing for really good coaches in this league, but they also played for motion coaches in college. When you go back and you look at, like I always say about like Curry and Thompson, they're obviously in a great setting. They played for McKillop, who was running screens all over the place, and Curry was running off things, and they were playing as much cutting as anybody. And then obviously Tony did a lot of the stuff with too big screening and lots of guys cutting in Washington State when Klay was there. But I think that if you can teach guys how to do that, if you can teach kids how to do that, I think that's really, really good. I think that people are generally right now, they've grown up with every ball handling and individual drill in the world. And so the easiest would be the dribble drive and just harp on the spacing aspect of it. Harp on create a closeout. When you get somebody running at you, make a play for the next person, respace, relocate, do all of those things that make those teams really good. But that's probably where I'd start with a young with the young group, not knowing who I have on my team, but
sure.
generally the generation we're in. Now, when I was growing up in the 90s, I mentioned Knight, Katie. I mean, I don't think we ran a ball screen in high school because it was all motion, because we grew up in, the motion era with the two best motion coaches in the country, an hour away each way. And so I just think that, it's funny how times have changed, but
sure.
But I probably would say that would be the most fun for me, but I don't think it would be the most applicable now.
Within the motion, teaching, I mean, obviously the reads, but teaching like the screening action and who makes the reads or who has the first right to make a read and avoid where the motion is just the ball being reversed and we screen away, we reverse, screen away, reverse, screen away.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what makes it special, and whether you designate screeners, you're obviously looking for the appropriate people to get open and screen. But, as some of the best actions are when the best shooters are the screeners, right? Whether they can slip out and slip off a flare, then come off a down, or they set a rip screen for somebody. And what are you going to do? Are you going to switch it? Are you going to allow it, or are you just going to allow a lot? Right. Yeah. Some of our best actions in college, because we had so many guys that could really shoot the ball, were just simple slice cuts and rip screens at the elbow for some of those shooters. You see Miami running a lot of that with Robinson. He's really good at both setting it and slipping it. But I think that, I'd say that's why it takes time. That's why, I always remember watching those IU teams when I was a kid. And the teams that got it, when they got late in the season, you couldn't scout them. They were unpredictable. They played with constant movement and motion. And again, it's not the way people are growing up playing. So it's way more difficult probably now than then to build it. I just think back again when we were in school, our 7th grade team played that way. Our 8th grade team played that way. We played that way all the way through high school. So then if you go to college, it's probably easier to play that way. But certainly that's not the way that most people are playing now.
Yeah.
And I'm not, again, I don't know that in a lot of cases it's better, because the amount of spacing that you have with the dribble drive and the amount of, space you have to cover behind the 3-point lines, I think that that's almost impossible to guard when you're playing against good players.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Coach, you're off the start sub sit hot seat. That was a lot of fun. Thanks for.
It's good. I had to write down my options after the first one. I didn't realize it was so complex.
The Ted Lasso one was more complex.
Close. Yeah.
That's right.
But I would have liked to have seen video of you teaching motion to your daughter's 5th grade team.
It wasn't motion. No, I think I showed clips of Milwaukee when they were doing all the 5-out stuff.
Oh, okay.
And so look how spread out they are. Look how much room they have. If the more room, so that it was only 2 clips. It didn't last very long.
Okay. It wasn't triple switching the Spanish girl.
Most of the team didn't show up. The rest of the team was looking up in the rafters, there was, or I guess not the rafters, at the ceiling. And so it wasn't, I think it was just for my own good.